The most expensive prison in the modern economy does not have bars. It has direct deposit, performance praise, and a manager who says, "I don't know what I'd do without you." Most people hear that sentence and feel proud. I hear a lock turning. I have spent my life studying incentives. And once you understand incentives, the workplace stops looking like a meritocracy and starts looking like a cage built out of convenience. The bars are not your weakness. The bars are your usefulness. That is why so many smart, disciplined, hardworking people wake up one day 10 years older and realize they did not build a career. They built a very stable place to stand still. That is a brutal thing to discover, because the pain is not that you were lazy. The pain is that you were admirable. You showed up. You solved problems. You made yourself dependable. You became the adult in the room. And then the room quietly decided it needed you exactly where you were. That is the competence cage. People think careers are rewarded by effort in a straight line. Work harder, get better, move up. That is a comforting fairy tale for obedient people. Real organizations do not promote based only on value created. They promote based on value moved. And the moment your value becomes too tightly welded to your current seat, moving you becomes expensive. That is the first law of the cage. If your manager promotes you, your work does not disappear. The monthly report still needs to be owned. The angry client still needs to be handled. The system still breaks on Thursday afternoon. The new hire still needs training. The messy account still needs cleaning. The process no one documented still needs the one person who knows where all the bodies are buried. If that one person is you, then promoting you does not feel like reward to the system. It feels like risk. Do not misunderstand me. Most managers are not waking up in the morning looking for clever ways to trap you. This is more mechanical than personal. They are responding to pain. Replacing quietly competent people creates pain. Finding somebody who can do the work creates pain. Training them creates pain. Surviving the mistakes of the replacement creates pain. Explaining the temporary drop in performance creates pain. And if the replacement fails, the pain rises up the chain and lands on the manager who made the move. So the organization does what almost all systems do when given a choice between long-term development and short-term comfort. It chooses comfort. That means it keeps you in place, praises you, expands your scope, and calls the whole arrangement opportunity. This is where many people lose years. They think more responsibility is evidence of growth. Sometimes it is. Often it is just weight without altitude. They hand you the difficult client. They ask you to mentor the junior person. They let you own the workflow nobody else wants. They call you the go-to person. They trust you with more. The workload gets bigger. The calendar gets tighter, the praise gets warmer, and the title sits exactly where it was. You think you are climbing. Very often you are just becoming load-bearing. There is a difference between becoming more important and becoming more movable. Most people never learn it until they have already paid for the lesson with time. When you become load-bearing inside a system, the system starts protecting itself from your movement. That is why the competence cage feels so confusing. You do everything you were told to do. You become reliable, you become low drama, you become the adult who cleans up messes, and somehow those very virtues become the reason you do not move. To understand why, you have to separate execution value from elevation value. Execution value is what makes your current machine run. It is delivery, precision, responsiveness, process mastery, the ability to finish the work in front of you with minimal supervision and minimal noise. Organizations love this because it lowers friction. Elevation value is different. Elevation value is what makes leadership imagine you in a different seat. It is judgment under ambiguity. It is visible problem framing. It is delegation. It is influence beyond your lane. It is the ability to move people, not just tasks. It is the ability to think one level above the work instead of getting faster. At the work here is the insult built into most organizations. They reward you daily for execution value, but they promote you intermittently based on elevation value. So if all your energy goes into becoming extraordinary at the first category, you can become indispensable at the very level that traps you. That is why I tell people competence is not the strategy. Competence is the entry ticket. Once you have it, the game changes. If you keep playing the old game, you become a beautifully optimized prisoner. The cage gets stronger because of repetition. People love the feeling of mastery. They know the system. They know the shortcuts. They can solve the recurring problems almost on instinct. They finish in half the time. They become the calm person in the storm. They call that growth. A lot of the time it is not growth. It is compression. You are shrinking the amount of thought required to do the same class of work that makes you faster. It does not automatically make you broader. A year later, you are excellent at the job you already have, but thinner than you should be in the skills the next job actually requires. Speed is not range. Efficiency is not expansion. Familiarity is not advancement. If you spend your best years becoming frictionless inside a narrow box, do not be surprised when the organization remembers you as the box. This is another ugly truth people do not say out loud. Once a company starts naming you for your function, your future begins to narrow. You become the spreadsheet person, the operations person, the escalations person, the rescue person, the person who always fixes month end, the person who can calm down the difficult client, the person who knows the ancient system, the person who can be trusted with the ugly work. At first this feels like reputation, then it hardens into identity, and identity inside institutions is sticky. People do not see potential neutrally. They see pattern. The longer you solve the same kind of problem, the more your history becomes evidence for their story about you. They stop seeing you as a person who can become something else. They see you as the safest answer to the current pain. That is not security. That is inertia with a friendly tone. Institutional knowledge is one of the most flattering cages in the world. Everybody asks for you. Everybody depends on you. Where the landmines are, the back doors, the exceptions, the weird little workarounds, the names, the politics, the hidden sequence that makes the machine turn on. It feels like power. Sometimes it is, but often it is a form of burial. The company is not imagining you elsewhere because you have become the memory foam packed into the shape of the roll. Remove you. And everything dents. So it does the rational thing for itself and the irrational thing for your future. It leaves you there. The most dangerous part is psychological. Once people depend on you, you start depending on being needed. The identity becomes emotionally profitable. You feel valuable. You feel responsible. You feel morally superior to louder, more political people who seem less competent than you. You tell yourself that eventually quality will speak. Quality does speak. It says, please keep this person exactly where they are. That is the cruelty of the competence cage. It converts your virtues into a retention mechanism and your pride into the glue. Now let me show you the second mechanism. Silence is interpreted as consent. If you keep your head down, do excellent work, never state what you want, never make your time horizon visible, never force a conversation. Most leadership teams will not interpret that as noble focus. They will interpret it as satisfaction. They assume you are fine. They assume you like the role. They assume you are stable. And if they think you are stable, there is no clock. If there is no clock, there is no urgency. If there is no urgency, you become tomorrow. S problem, the irony is brutal. The employee who causes no trouble often receives no motion. The employee who communicates intention, builds visibility, and signals possible exit creates urgency. Organizations respond to urgency far faster than they respond to merit. That sounds cynical, only if you have not studied incentives. I have systems do not move because the deserving quietly deserve. Systems move because delay becomes costly. That is why the polite strategy fails so often. You tell yourself that if you just become excellent enough, somebody above you will surely notice. But promotion decisions are not made by a magical scorekeeper in the sky. They are made by human beings in rooms where narrative matters more than raw output. Your manager may see your work. Your manager, as manager, often does not. 2 levels up. You are a name, a summary, or nothing at all. In those conversations, nobody is reading your task completion. History line by line. They are asking a simpler question: who comes to mind for the next role? That question is not answered by private excellence alone. It is answered by story. Who is seen as ready? Who is known outside the immediate lane? Who has already been associated with judgment, visibility, cross-functional trust, ambition, leadership temperature? Performance data says you are good. Narrative says you are promotable. If nobody is carrying your narrative, your data sits in a drawer and your future stays parked. This is why so many people feel betrayed by performance reviews. They are praised for reliability, responsiveness, excellence, ownership. The language is glowing, the raise is small, the title does not move, the promotion goes to someone whose technical output looked weaker from the inside. Why? Because the organization was never evaluating a promotion the way you thought it was. It was not asking who is best at the current role. It was asking who has already become legible as the next role. Those are different questions. If you spent 2 years becoming immaculate at the wrong question, you do not get cheated by reality. You get introduced to it. I have seen this pattern in business over and over. People confuse usefulness with leverage. Usefulness means the system likes having you. Leverage means the system changes its behavior because of you. A quietly competent employee is highly useful and often low leverage. A visible employee with outside options, internal allies, explicit ambition, and a clear story of future value has more leverage, even if the current role is executed less elegantly. That is not always fair. It is often true. Now, some people hear this and decide the lesson is to become political, noisy, manipulative, or theatrical. That is a childish reaction. I am not telling you to become fake. I am telling you that adulthood in organizations requires design. You have to stop acting as if career motion will emerge automatically from private virtue. Private virtue matters, but private virtue without public architecture is a donation. You need 3 things if you want to break the cage. First, you need to stop optimizing for irreplaceability in the current seat. This shocks people because they have been trained to believe that becoming irreplaceable is the dream. It is not. Being irreplaceable can be useful when you own the asset. When you do not own the asset, Irreplaceability is often just unpaid captivity. The more the system feels it cannot move you without pain, the more it will pay you with praise instead of trajectory. You do not want to be irreplaceable. You want to be promotably replaceable. That means documenting, teaching, standardizing, creating lift around you. Reducing the terror attached to your movement. Many people do the opposite. They become the one secret bridge between chaos and order. Then they wonder why nobody lets them cross. Second, you need visible proof of next-level behavior before the title arrives. Most people wait for permission. They think strategy starts after promotion. In reality, promotion often follows visible evidence that you can already think beyond the current box. That can mean speaking in terms of trade-offs instead of tasks. It can mean improving a system instead of merely surviving it. It can mean mentoring with intention instead of rescuing reflexively. It can mean presenting decisions in business language, not just operational language. It can mean building relationships with people who live outside your immediate chain. The next role cannot be a fantasy in your own head. It has to become a picture in someone else's head. Third, you need an exit clock. A cage stays closed when the system believes your staying is automatic. The moment leadership sees that your trajectory has a time horizon, their math changes. I am not talking about making threats in the hallway like an amateur. I am talking about clarity. What are you building toward? What role are you targeting? What skills are you intentionally acquiring? What would cause you to stay? What would cause you to move? If nobody knows that your future has edges, they will treat your present as permanent. This is one reason changing companies so often unlocks growth. A new company does not know your cage history. It does not remember you as the person who fixes the ugly report or owns the messy account or keeps the old machine alive. It sees a cleaner signal. Sometimes the fastest way to become someone new is to leave the place that has already reduced you to your old utility. That does not mean quitting impulsively. It means understanding that institutions remember you through the lens of your repeated use. If that lens has hardened, internal reinvention becomes costly. People also misunderstand what being good really means. They think if they are technically superior, that should dominate everything else. In investing, I learned long ago that a business is not just a product. It is also distribution, incentives, capital allocation, reputation, pricing power, timing, and structure. Careers are the same. Your output is not the whole game. Your output is one input in a larger machine that includes visibility, substitution risk, internal politics, manager incentives, timing, story, and outside options. A career built only on output is like a business built only on a good product. It may still lose to something structurally better designed. That is why I push so hard against comfort. Comfort is the upholstery inside the cage. It is what makes intelligent people stay too long. The calendar becomes predictable, the praise becomes familiar, the systems become easy, you become fast. People like you can do the job in your sleep. That feels efficient, it feels safe, it feels earned. But comfort can be one of the most expensive substances in the labor market. It dulls your appetite for range. It teaches you to protect the very routine that is flattening you. It rewards you every Friday for staying the same. Progress often feels worse in the short term than comfort. Progress makes you slower again. Progress makes you visible in new ways. Progress makes you risk looking unfinished. Progress requires political courage, not just technical competence. Progress forces you to stop winning the old game before the new game has fully started paying you. That is why many people never leave the cage. The cage does not feel like punishment. It feels like competence with benefits. There is also a moral trap hidden inside this. A lot of good people think asking for more is distasteful. They think stating ambition will make them seem needy. They think talking about their work is bragging. They think forcing clarity is selfish. They think building visibility is politic. So they choose quiet excellence as a form of character. Character matters, but do not confuse silence with virtue and invisibility with dignity. If nobody above your manager knows what you are building, your restraint is not nobility. It is misallocated pride. One of the most useful ideas in my life has been the difference between an inner scorecard and an outer scorecard. Most people hear that and think it means ignore the external world. It does not. It means do not become enslaved by external applause. But many people twist that into passivity. They say, I do not need to talk about my work. I know what I do. That is not an inner scorecard. That is strategic negligence. The inner scorecard should govern your standards. It should not erase your understanding of how systems allocate opportunity. You can be inwardly grounded and still outwardly legible. You can be modest and still explicit. You can avoid vanity while refusing disappearance. Let me say something even sharper. If you are extraordinary at making the system function and terrible at making your own trajectory function, you are not being humble. You are subsidizing the organization with your life. Years are the currency here, not just salary years. Years in which you could have developed new judgment, Years in which your title could have reset. Years in which your compensation ceiling could have moved. Years in which your identity could have widened. Years in which you could have learned to lead, not just deliver. Years in which your bargaining power could have compounded. That is why this trap costs more than money. Money can be made back. A stalled decade is harder to refinance. The people who escape are not always the loudest. They are the clearest. They understand that being good at the current role is only the floor. Then they do what most trapped people resist. They create substitution paths around themselves. They speak in terms of future value, not only current reliability. They build relationships beyond the immediate manager. They ask direct questions about scope and trajectory. They expose themselves to ambiguity before they feel fully ready. They accept being less polished at the edge of growth than they were in the center of repetition. They treat their career like capital allocation, not like obedience. That last point matters. Capital allocation is deciding where each unit of scarce resource goes for the best long-term return. Your time, attention, reputation, and energy are capital. If you allocate all of it to perfecting the current box, do not act surprised when your returns stay local. You need some of that capital pointed at narrative, breadth, exposure, sponsor relationships, new skill acquisition, and optionality. Otherwise, you are reinvesting 100% of your effort back into the cage. And cages get stronger when you reinvest in them. There comes a point where the question is no longer, why haven't they recognized me? That is the wrong question. The real question is, what behavior of mine keeps making this role the easiest place for the system to keep me? That question is painful because it returns agency to you. It forces you to admit that you may have participated in your own confinement by overvaluing private competence and undervaluing strategic motion. It forces you to see that the praise you treasured may have functioned like a sedative. It forces you to ask whether being known as dependable has cost you the chance to be known as ready. This is where most people get defensive. They say the company should do better. Maybe it should. I would prefer well-designed systems too. But investing taught me never to confuse what should happen with what tends to happen. You build around reality, not around your preferred ethics for strangers. Reality says this: if you become too convenient in one place, the system will usually consume your convenience before it funds your rise. If you never articulate movement, silence will be read as contentment. If you spend 5 years becoming faster at the same work, you may wake up with mastery that has very little resale value at the next level. If you let your identity merge with your function, the organization will remember the function and forget the rest. If your ambition remains private, your future remains optional for everyone except you. This is not a reason for bitterness. It is a reason for design. I am not asking you to stop being excellent. I am telling you to stop worshiping excellence at the wrong altitude. Be excellent. Yes, then ask what that excellence is buying. Is it buying learning, story, range, leverage, optionality, visibility, sponsorship, movement, or is it merely buying a cleaner version of the same Tuesday over and over again? There is nothing noble about being trapped in a role you have mastered if the mastery no longer compounds. I like compounding, everyone knows that. But compounding does not reward time alone. It rewards time multiplied by the right engine. Put 10 years behind the wrong engine and you do not get wisdom, you get entrenchment. That is what terrifies me for ambitious, disciplined people inside large organizations. They confuse endurance with compounding. They think because they stayed, value must be accumulating. Sometimes it is. Sometimes you are just deepening grooves in a place designed to keep rolling you back into the same track. One of the cleanest tests I know is this: if you vanish for 90 days, would the organization scramble to preserve your trajectory or merely scramble to preserve your output? If the answer is output, then you know what the system truly values about you. And if all it values is your current function, then your first responsibility is not to work even harder. Your first responsibility is to stop giving the cage new steel, train replacements. Document what only you know. Shift part of your effort from execution to visibility. Start conversations before you feel comfortable. Signal the role you want before the opening exists. Build sponsors, not just admirers. Take on work that expands your range. Not only your burden, let some parts of the old identity become less polished while the new identity is being built. And if the system still insists on seeing you only as the safe pair of hands in the old seat, then leave with a clean conscience. You are not betraying the company. You are refusing indefinite captivity. The world does not owe you motion because you were loyal to a structure that benefited from your stillness. Loyalty is valuable when it is mutual. When it is one-sided, it becomes a discount you apply to your own future. I have never believed that life should be spent proving devotion to systems that cannot distinguish gratitude from inertia. If you are good, truly good, then your job is not to become harder and harder to move. Your job is to become more and more capable of placing yourself where your judgment, not just your reliability, can compound. The cage opens long before most people think it does. but it does not open for effort alone. It opens when you stop confusing being needed with being advanced. So here is the test. Look hard at the praise you get. Is it praise for growth or praise for containment? Are they admiring your trajectory or your convenience? Are they investing in your next level or ensuring their current comfort? Are you building a career or have you become beautifully efficient at protecting the organization from the inconvenience of your own rise? Most people will avoid that question because the answer cuts. You should not avoid it, because one day you are going to pay for the answer either way. You can pay now with discomfort, visibility, honest conversations, strategic repositioning, and maybe a leap before you feel polished. Or you can pay later with a decade gone, a title that flatlined, a skill stack optimized for a box you no longer want, and the terrible realization that you did not fail at work. You succeeded inside a cage. And if you can finally see the cage, then you are standing at the only moment that matters. You can spend the next few years becoming even better at carrying the bars. Or you can make yourself expensive to lose instead of convenient to keep. Choose carefully. One path gives you applause, the other gives you a future.